Hello everyone, this is Arisaig, Winterthorn, Knight of the Conclave. You might also know me as Everett Ratcliffe. And here we are, part 3 of the Trial of the Gathering little mini-series. Fun fact, this was supposed to just be a 10-minute video, and now it's a 3-parter where we're averaging about 40 minutes an episode. Let's see how long this one takes. So this is part 3 of the Trial of the Gathering, which I am calling Actualization. So, just a brief recap of the first 2 parts. The first one, we tackled your fears to get your crystal. This is all part of a journey, so if you're just tuning in now, go back to part 1, work on part 1, then do part 2, and then come back to this part and we'll see you then. If you've been following through, awesome. Glad to be seeing that people have been doing it. But as you will know, that the first part was about tackling fear to get your crystal. The second part was about finding your calling in your path to build your get your lightsaber parts. And now we're going to be going on to part 3, actualization. We'll put it all together, and we're going to be going developing who you are. So, throughout this series, we've been following the younglings in gathering their crystal, getting their parts, and now in this part, the 3rd episode of this little series, which would be episode 8 of season 5, they put together their crystals. So, for the majority of this one, we're really focusing on just a couple of moments. There's a bit of a rescue mission in the episode if you decide to watch the episode before doing this part. But it sort of works on their flaws a little bit, and you see them really come into their own as Jedi. However, it's not really the focus of what we're doing here. There are parts of it that I'll be focusing on in another little mini-series that I've been wanting to do, but for now we're really just focusing on the younglings and their development of their sabers. So, we see very early on that the younglings have returned to making their sabers. It's a very peaceful, very tranquil scene. Even though at the end of the last one, Ahsoka had just been captured, they've taken a moment to return back to their work. So even with all the stress, they've returned to their mental sacred space and are working on themselves with the physical representation of that work being the creation of their saber. So, for this exercise, we're just right into the exercise. Return to your sacred space, clean it, and find yourself free of distraction. And just make it all tranquil again. Now, once you've done that, leave. Don't go to your sacred space. Go to a busy place, a mall. Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so be safe first. Wear a mask, wash your hands. But if you're watching this in the distant future and this pandemic has miraculously finally disappeared, go wherever you want. Awesome. Go to a mall, go to a bus stop, a public park, somewhere where you can expect that people will be passing by, that people will be able to see you. Okay, don't hide away. Don't go to a quiet place. It has to be stressful. Basically, anywhere you can go that you cannot control what's going on around you or whom will be around. Now sit down, close your eyes, and just listen. At first, you're going to hear everybody's words. Even a lot of your own mental words. You may hear your own ego beginning to mock you. That little voice in the back of your head that's always telling you things. It's very important to learn to hear it, but it's important to learn to not listen to it. Your ego is very important to understand, because it helps you process the world around you like a filter. However, it's not you, and you need to understand that it's not you. It's sort of like a friend that's just a little bit too concerned. Okay, so learn. So you're going to hear everyone's words. You're going to hear the words of your ego. Learn to just let it go. It becomes background noise, as similar as the birds chirping in the trees, the cars, the noise of the cars driving by, the wind passing through. It's just noise. Let it go. Let the words become mere noise, a babbling brook of just 100 different voices. Breathe. Just take deep, slow breath and try to remain perfectly still. Now, I want you to try to hold that for as long as possible. Just sit, breathe, be quiet, close your eyes, and learn to ignore all of that. And try to hold it for as long as possible. Try to aim for about 10 minutes. You might be able to do it for longer. If you can, awesome. If you can't, there's no shame in that. Try to aim for about 10 minutes. That's just so you have an idea of what this is like. Do not let anything distract you for that time. Okay, eventually, you'll just be like, okay, that's enough. But the point of this exercise is to show that meditation isn't about being able to do meditation when it's easy. It's about being able to reach it when it's hard. Getting into that state of being able to be like, at any time is a key factor to being a Jedi. Like, it's not, like, if you can't do that, it doesn't mean you're not a Jedi, but it's, sometimes being a Jedi can be very stressful. Especially the further along you get in it, as you step into, like, a leadership role, a teaching role, as you, like, as people begin to look up to you, or just in, like, even as non-Jedi, if you're watching this and you're just not a Jedi, being able to do this can drastically change your life. I work as a receptionist at a hotel, and it gets stressful. Sometimes there's a wedding going on, and I'm trying to check in a whole bunch of people, and there's drunk guests, and it just becomes a lot. And it can be easy, and I see people snap under it. I don't snap because when it gets to me, I take 3 seconds to just be like, and everything just fades. Like all the noise just becomes noise. It just becomes a background, and just letting it go. And that's just a simple meditation that just takes a couple seconds. I have my longer meditations, but that's one that I can reach at any point, when life becomes a little crazy. Now, how this all ties into what's going on in the episode that we're observing, as I said, Ahsoka had just been captured by pirates. There had been this epic raid. They had to fight off the pirates, and now their ship is floating off, and it's damaged. But yet they still managed to be like, okay, all that happened. It's now in the past. We can learn from it, but right now we can't change it. So, and we're never going to be able to change it. It's the past. It's gone. It's over. It's time to let that go. And now that we have nothing better to do, let's work on ourselves. That's the key point that I take away from here. Another point that I want to make about this is that all the younglings, while they're meditating, they're not doing, well, they're doing the exact same thing. They're all building their lightsabers. But if you watch it, and I recommend watching because it's an absolutely gorgeous scene. I wish more of the movies, like the proper movies, did something like this. They're building their lightsabers. They're sitting there, they're just putting it all together. And it's very beautiful. The music's beautiful, the sounds, the visuals. But there's something that I've noticed several times now. No two are sitting the same way. There's 4 of them in the room. So one has their hands one over the other. So like their lightsabers floating, like all the parts are floating in between their hands, and they're going like this, and they're putting it all together. One has their hands sort of side to side, and the parts are floating around, and they're just like sort of putting it all together. One is sitting on their knees before, like, because the 3 of them are sitting at desks, but one's sitting on the ground. He has his hands behind his back, sort of like a cross. He's just breathing and letting it float all in front of him. And another is sitting at a table, sort of like I am now. He has his hands on the table, his hands up, and he's just letting it all happen. The key is comfort. Now, you'll have people that will teach you different meditation styles, and if they're telling you to sit in a certain way, it's worth trying it at least, because there might be a point to it. Good posture, of course, is very important. Being able to properly breathe is, of course, very important, and the reason why a lot of meditation involves sitting straight up is because your chest is able to open up all the way, and thus your lungs are able to open up all the way. You're able to breathe properly. Because if you're all slouched over, you're not going to be able to breathe properly. You're really just closing yourself off. So, but for these meditations, I recommend just being comfortable. When you're sitting down, sit in a way that's comfortable. If you can't sit all the way on the ground, sit on a chair. If you can't cross your legs, that's fine. If you can, cool. If you can do a full double lotus Zen meditation stance, awesome. I can do that, but it's just not comfortable, and it makes me miserable after about 3 minutes of doing it. So I don't do it. I'll cross my legs. I'll sit. I have a beautiful meditation cushion. If you're really getting into meditation, I highly recommend you get a meditation cushion. Life-changing. Really helps with your posture and getting all the way down on the ground without being uncomfortable. So, as they're making their sabers, there's the same sort of beats to making them, and this is where we're going to be focusing. There's a couple lessons we could take from this. So, while they're starting, they find the pieces. There's tons of pieces, little screws, wires, struts, obviously the external features, and they rise them to about eye level, right? So the reason why I see them being risen to eye level is so they could be properly inspected. If they're just off, I'm sure they could make them if they're off on another table, and no problem, but for the purpose of this, we're observing all the pieces that they've collected throughout this time, the crystal, the parts for the saber. They're all being collected, and they're all being raised to eye level to be inspected. Even though their eyes are closed, I think it's a visual representation that we have to observe what we have brought together. So this is akin to our Jedi training. We grab many different things from the people that we meet along the way, and none of it, especially if you're new to this training, a lot of it doesn't, and you might look at it and be like, well, how does this make sense? Example, I only recently started doing psi balls and all that, where you're focusing all your energy on a little point between your hands. I had been introduced to them ages ago, and I thought it was this is ridiculous, what's the point of this? But now I sort of understand it. It doesn't have a practical application, and not everything has to have a practical application. So, none of it usually seems like it fits together, and sometimes for a long time. You might learn something in your first year being a Jedi, and never really grasp it. You might have a full understanding of it, but you might not understand how it plays into everything else you're learning. And this is the point of putting your saber together. We hold on to all these different things, and we bring it to the table, we inspect it, and we put it together into our saber. And for a while they're putting, so this is the second point that I want to bring into, while they're putting it all together, everything's flying around, the screws are flying around, everything's going, and you can see that it's becoming organized as they go along. But for a couple seconds, it's very chaotic. Things are spinning, there are many small parts flying about. At some point, you're like, how did this possibly fit together? And this is akin to moments in our training when we've undergone a lot of training, but it's still very ethereal. You've done it, and you're like, okay, that's cool, but how? There's no way this could possibly fit into me being a Jedi, or how it can fit, but you're not quite sure how it fits with different things. It's all floating around. You're like, okay, it's becoming a little much. I have to slow it down, take a deep breath, return to that mental headspace, and piece it together. And that's why we're sitting down and we're meditating on it and we're working through it. We've collected our crystal by addressing our fears. We got the parts by learning what our personal goals are, our aspirations as Jedi are. And now we're bringing everything that we've trained throughout our Jedi path, the crystal, the lightsaber, we're bringing it all together here. And then the third beat that we see while they're building their sabers is everything suddenly snaps together. It's beautiful. Honestly, if you haven't seen this episode, go and watch it. For that scene alone, my goodness. Everything's floating around, everything sort of lines up, and then it floats and before them. And they have their saber. It's this beautiful, like, eureka, it's done. We have it. And this is the moment that they have stopped being younglings. They're still addressed as younglings, but they're no longer younglings. This is when we address them as learners, initiates, and potential apprentices. They can now go forward and become apprentices at this point. We know they don't just quite yet, because we see them in another episode, and they're still doing training as a group, and that's fine. You don't have to immediately go on to be an apprentice after finally figuring out what you want to do. There's so much training to do, and you have the rest of your life to do it. There's no rush. But this is where they stop being younglings. They finally understand themselves. So this is one of the great trials of a Jedi, is finally figure out how you play in all this. It's a trial, but it's also a tribulation, because you might come to a point where you're like, what's the point? Like, there's all these Jedi out there that are so good. Like, you watch them, you see them in different communities, you're like, wow, how do I get from here to there? And you might be like, well, why would I end up being, like, they're a great Jedi, they've been doing this for years and years and years. Everyone has to start at year 0, day 0, day 1, day 2, year 5. I still sometimes feel like I'm the new guy, but I've been a Jedi for now 4 years at this point, and there's still people that I look at like, well, they've been a Jedi for 20 years. How am I going to hold a candle to them? I'm already a quarter of the way there. Like, that's how it works. So it's a great trial, it's a great tribulation, and when they finally get it, when it comes, all the training comes together and they realize, we got it. It requires hard work to get to that I got it point, and it requires focus and a clear mind. So you have to avoid the pitfall of a clouded mind. You have to be able to be like, okay, all those fears, all the stresses, I have to put them to the side and see things as they are, and be able to address the situation, to understand who am I as a Jedi. It is key to have one of these moments prior to be taken on as an apprentice. It marks a turning point in how one pursues training. So for this, I want to observe a quote from Bruce Lee. It's one that I'm sure many people have seen around. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. So, as I see it, absorb everything that's given to you. You might not understand how it's useful yet. Gather it, pull it towards you, and then you'll start absorbing just the useful stuff. Everything else, leave it. Eventually, a sponge becomes saturated. Boom, you got the saturated sponge of a Jedi that you are. And now you have to add what is specifically your own. For this, I'm just going to draw from my own experience. I had a very intensive apprenticeship, and I tackled my first initiates training very, very seriously. I went like way too overboard in most cases, but you know what? It helped me find a great teacher. But overall, I was able to absorb everything that was useful, discard the stuff that I was just like, this is useless, and add what was specifically my own. Now, there's no real hiding it at this point in my training, and my Jedi path. I am most widely known for this. So it's really no surprise that I am doing this 3-part series on making your lightsaber, when this is what I'm most known for. my lightsaber and my training as with the lightsaber. This is how I've physically been able to display what is uniquely my own. I physically train, like I do push-ups, I do running, I do all these things to better be able to use this, and I do boring repetitions of very basic principles and practices so I can become better at using this. Will I be doing this forever? Who knows? Maybe. I hope so. I really enjoy using it, and maybe I will. But there might be a point where I realize that this is not enough, like this is not me anymore. But this is right now what makes me uniquely my own. I use this to inspire people, I use it to train people, and I use it to draw parallels between the different types of training that we go through. Now, that's just my own take on it. That is how I've created what is specifically my own and learned how to absorb things. Now, I had said it is key to have one of these moments prior to be taken on as an apprentice. Sometimes this might happen as you're an apprentice. God, who knows? Maybe you might be a knight or a master or whatever, and still not had one of these eureka moments of realizing how you fit into being a Jedi and how you fit into the Jedi community. Now, some people might argue you don't have to be part of the Jedi community to be a Jedi, and it's like, okay, yeah, I guess it would be a bit ableist to say that you have to be part of the community to be a Jedi, because some people don't have internet, and a large part of the community, because we like reaching out to find the best teachers out there and on an international scale, and the internet is a fantastic method of doing that. But not everybody has that type of access. So a lot of Jedi do a lot of their training offline, and even people that have internet should be doing a lot of training offline, donating their time, helping people, working out at a gym, teaching, and just reading books just to educate themselves. Some people have managed to find offline orders, which is amazing. I'm so jealous. One day, I keep telling myself, one day I'm going to get this done. It's really, like, I keep reaching out to try to find people in my area to do this, but it's just not more people are interested in doing this type of stuff than the philosophy side of stuff, and I sort of want to do both, and, donate time and help people as an order, but that's just me. So, bam, they've had this eureka moment, their sabers are completed, they're floating in front of them, it's beautiful, they reach out and they take them. This all happens in the first minute of this episode, and this is where I have literally the rest of my, this lesson is literally the first 2 minutes of this episode. The rest of it, it's good, watch it, but it's not part of this lesson. That's how jam-packed this part is with information. So, they're done. They've completed their lightsabers. They snatch them out of the air, and they're like, yeah! They go and they ignite their lightsabers, and they're greeted by these beautiful green and blue blades. Now, this episode, we're going into a bit of a meta here, like metatextual ideologies. This episode was made before the Disney takeover of the Star Wars mythos. So the meaning behind the colors were a bit different, but at the same time they're the same. So we're going to go into that, and I'm able to address something that people ask me quite often. So the question I get asked a lot, and I kid you not, a lot, and I'm so happy to help people with this. This is not something that I'm complaining about. I love helping people, and I love helping people get physically active, and if this is what gets you outside and training, sweating, breathing hard, hell yeah. I will help you find one that you love, pressing that button every single time and getting that light and being like, yeah, I will do that. I love doing that. But so I'm going to address it quite broadly for this, the purpose of this episode. So the question I get asked is, what color should my saber be? what's the meaning behind each color, etc., etc. I get it very often. Lots of different people. Some people I don't know very well. Like I've had people that just approach me sort of out of the blue that I don't quite know that well, and they expect me to give them this in-depth reason, and it's like I'm not omniscient. If I know you well enough, I can probably help. But this video, I hope to address that a bit. So, first, should there be a meaning to the colors? There doesn't have to be. It could just be your favorite color. Like, if that does it for you, hell yeah. It doesn't have to be some huge esoteric question that you spend months meditating on. It could, but equally with equal validity, it could be something that you spend a long time working on. So we're going to go into the pre-takeover stuff first. So blues used to represent guardians, green was for consulars, you had yellows like mine, which were for sentinels. That's just how it used to work. But a lot of people liked it like that. But I remember for myself, I remember being very on the fence about that, being like, okay, like, yeah, but at the same time, it just feels one-dimensional. Now, yes, the crystal chose the Jedi. As we went into before, the crystal presents, the crystal and the Force presents the trial, that they have to confront their fears and get their crystal. So whatever crystal comes to them, of course, it'd be a color that sort of represents them. So yeah, the green ones would be for people that are more interested in the Force side of things, blue for people that are more interested in like the practical applications, blah blah. Like there's so much reasons, but I just never felt that it lacked a lot of depth and personality. It just felt very divisive. Divisive words, I don't know. And it's fine. This is a perfectly valid explanation. If you want to be green for a consular, awesome. I have a green saber, but it's not because I'm a consular, but it's more my master saber was when I was training was green, and this was like I had an option for this. That's green saber. I could go green or I could go blue, and I went green to sort of pay homage to him. It's not my favorite saber in the world, but I got it because it was really like a really great deal. But that's a whole other story. So this crystal came to them. So if it's a color that's already that matches their personality, it just sort of makes sense, right? However, eventually Disney came in and they just changed the system, and some people were upset about this. But I personally very, very much liked how it worked. So it became more on the user themselves. So for the people that aren't in the know of how the changes went, was previously the color was determined already by the crystal. It came as a blue or a green or a yellow. There were some red ones. Then you had all these other ones that you can go on journeys for. You had hurricane crystals, which were purple, which Mace Windu used one. You can use crate dragon pearls. You could use. There's all these different crystals. There was one that some Jedi would go after. It was a white one, but you had to follow this giant man-eating worm, and it would excrete once every 7 years. And if you were lucky, there'd be a crystal inside that excrement, and it created this white blade that was very, very light. So a lot of Makashi users loved it because it was very easy for them to use. However, it did require a lot of work. Now, I liked it because it was sort of an adventure for the Jedi to go on to prove to themselves that their training had advanced. But at the same time, it just removed a lot of the personal meaning. But that this is just my hot take on it. Some people liked it how it was. So, but now the crystals come naturally white, but they're useless. They are way too brittle. They could not withstand all the power of a lightsaber coursing through it. It would shatter. So while the Jedi is making their lightsaber, they meditate on the crystal. The crystal becomes able to take that strain, but as a result, it becomes sort of like it takes on a color that represents the force of the user. Like as we mentioned, I believe is in the second, like the last episode of this series, lightsaber architect Huang asked, "What connects to your force?" And he's asking about the lightsaber parts, but the crystal connects to your force, and as a result, it takes on this color. Now, this, as I see it, this robs the universal meaning of each color. You can't just say a blue, ooh, blue guardian. Maybe not. Maybe this person just likes the color blue. Maybe it makes them valiant in battle, humble in retreat. It's because it now becomes super, super personal. I can tell you something about the Jedi using it, but it might also not mean anything at all. So again, I'm going to just pull from my personal example because I can't speak for anybody else. When I started out as a Jedi, I had a white crystal. Now, as I said, the crystals all start out white, but the problem is they're too weak. So when they get imbued, they take on a color. White's not a color that can be naturally imbued. Sith, now in this new mythos, they have to take a crystal from a Jedi and bleed it. They have to hurt it, and it takes on that red hue that we all know. When a crystal is healed again, like, if a Jedi claims that crystal again and they heal it, it takes on that white color. Now, this was this was part of my path, because when I came to the Jedi community, I was in a very bad state. I was on a very dark, destructive path, and I wanted to heal. So I chose a white one because it represented, for me at least, healing and growth. But as I grew, I changed. People change, and that's great. If you're not changing, what's the point? You don't have to change drastically, but your views change. Eventually, I was healed, and a lot of people have noticed, I don't use my white crystal and my white saber anymore. I still have it. It's very personal to me, and I keep it in a very important place because it's this was my first one, and this is the one that helped me. It represented healing, but it also helped me actually heal. And I knew eventually it just wasn't me. So I had meditated before getting that saber and and then eventually settling on the white. But I knew eventually I wasn't quite sure if it was me, so I bought a couple others. I got my cross guard, which was yellow, and but now everyone knows yellow is me. I love yellow. It's so pretty and it's warm. But eventually I settled on yellow, and for me the meaning became warmth, protection, and energy. It's because right now in my path I've gone from healing myself to helping heal others. I've become a teacher. I'm working on becoming a leader. It is my duty to be the warmth and cold, protection in dangerous places, and to manage the energy of those around me. That's been a lot of my training in the past year, is when I see things spiraling out of control, to be that 0 point, to be like, okay, we're going to pull it all in, we're going to balance it all out, bring the high tensions down, bring low energy up so people get involved and they want to get involved. And of course, managing people that are just being inflammatory. So that's why I've now settled on yellow. I still have my indigo one, I have a white one, I have my green one, but yellow is now me. So now the question really becomes, what color is for you? We've got your crystal, we've got your lightsaber parts, we put it all together. When you press that button, what happens? What color is going to pop out? So akin to finding the crystal, only you can know. It is as simple as a reason as I admire such and such Jedi and I want to emulate them. My own apprentice has a gorgeous, gorgeous orange lightsaber, and he does it because he wants to emulate the Jedi Master Plo Koon, the fictional master. And that's great. Plo Koon is fantastic. I personally admire him in the fiction, and if he wants to emulate him, awesome. And that's why he has the orange one. It could simply be, I just like this color. Cool, that's great. Like I'm not gonna like say that's not as valid as somebody who can write a 500-page thesis on why they chose a specific color, and like they've chosen it right down to the hex value color. Like yeah, cool. Like you can go into that much stuff. I don't know why you would. It's just a color. I try to keep meaning simple. So as I said, warmth, protection, and energy. 3 simple words. But that's just me. So only you can know, and you define how much meaning you really want to put into it. Some people just don't like lightsabers at all. So maybe this whole 3-part series means nothing for those people. Or they're just like, ugh, it relies too much on the fiction. I don't want to do this. Okay, cool. Some people want to do this, and they want to go more in depth on this, and that's awesome. So, overall, the only color one shouldn't choose is one that someone has chosen for them. As I said earlier, a lot of people come to me and ask, what should be my lightsaber color? And they really want my answer, and it's like, I shouldn't choose for you. I can help you arrive to an answer, and I have done that for a lot of people, but like, ooh, no, I want you to choose for me. Should I have a green one, or should I have a yellow one? It's like, I could give you an answer, but I guarantee it won't be one that is right. It could be the right one. God, who knows? Maybe I'll say green, and you get one, and you're like, yes, this is perfect, just for me. Awesome. I'm so glad that you didn't choose this one, because that would have been the wrong one. Awesome. But it's not. This isn't one that I should arrive to for you, just as you shouldn't arrive one for someone else or for me. This is a very personal thing. And for the sake of this lesson, even if you're not physically building one of these metal tubes with a glow stick coming out the end, in the training of this, when you're coming to this part, this is just to understand yourself more. So, in the end, you have to acknowledge that you are beautiful and unique, just as your lightsaber, even just a spiritual lightsaber, can be. Going back to an exercise. So the last one we went to a noisy place, whatever. But for this one, we're going to return back to your sacred place. Clean it again. Who knows what happens. Clean it, make it tranquil, light some incense, put on some nice relaxing music, whatever you need to do to get to that headspace. Get comfortable, nice and warm. Take this time to relax. Just get down, bring your energy down, and just be with yourself for a moment. Now what we're going to do for this is to project your lightsaber into reality. Sit, relax, close your eyes, and let colors just dance through your mind. One should eventually catch your eye. It could simply just be your favorite color. There's nothing, as I said many times now, there's nothing wrong with that. This is your lightsaber, and maybe the reason why something is your favorite color is because it speaks to you on such a deep level. Even if it's completely unconscious and you derive more meaning later down the road. But still, you have to be aware of your ego as a factor. It is important to separate your ego in this decision. Remember, your ego is that little noise in the back of your head that you always hear, and you often hear it as your own voice, and that's what a lot of people have trouble with. If you can hear it in your mind, it's probably not you. It's probably your ego again, trying to sneak up on you, and it's trying to get in there and influence your decisions. So, breathe. You can hear it, but don't listen to it. That's a very important distinction that you have to make. Just how I can hear this, me snapping my fingers, but I don't let that influence my decision. I'm not listening to it. I'm hearing it. You get it? So once you've separated your ego from this, you could catch the color that you're letting just dance through your mind, catch your eye. Now, you have to ask yourself, is this truly your eye or is it your ego's? Sometimes it's both, and that's fine, as long as you are the one that's catching it as well. If it's just your ego, like I see people that are like, oh, I need to go purple because whatever, it's my favorite color. Like, this is where it gets very difficult to explain because it's so esoteric and it's very hard to nail down. The dark saber. Let's go with the dark saber for example. I see so many people who want to go with the dark saber because it's cool, and at the same time as I say that awesome, like that's cool, and it is cool, but at the same time, like a lot of people who are choosing that are choosing it specifically for the cool factor, and for me that's the ego. The ego seizing full control of that situation, being like, yeah, I have this person as my slave, and they do whatever I want. You have to ask yourself, is it really me? And for the sake of all three of these, we're not actually building a physical lightsaber here. We're not building one of these. These are expensive. Not everybody can afford one of these. This is addressing your fears, your goals, and now we're putting it all together and developing yourself and projecting you into reality. So now that you've separated your ego from the situation and you're letting these colors dance through your mind, you're going to catch one. One's gonna just make sense. It's going to resonate with you. What meaning do you derive from this color? It could be a lot of meaning. It could be very little meaning. It could be simple. It could be complex. It can be nothing. It could just simply be, this is me. Do you have any symbolism for it? You don't need to ever prove the symbolism. It could simply be for you. If somebody says that your meaning is invalid, these people are just being inflammatory for the sake of being inflammatory. The point is that you feel it. And what feelings does it invoke in you? Remember, it's to make you humble, make you valiant in battle, humble in retreat. I used to be very, very a big hothead. I used to get into so many flame wars because I didn't know how to retreat. And that's something that I've had to learn how to do. And so many times, like even sometimes I'll type out a whole paragraph and realize, why am I even bothering with this? This is not a battle I'm choosing this battle, but it's not one that I need to do. The mental lightsaber goes away. I step back, I retreat, and be like, do I need to get involved? Somebody else can get involved, somebody who's probably much better capable of handling the situation. Do I need to say this? I've probably deleted an entire thesis worth of information over the past couple of years just because it's like, maybe this isn't worth my time. So, there's no shame in having a unique color. Because some people are very like oh, I have an indigo saber from Saberforge, and it's like, you can't get them anymore. Like, they just don't offer that as an option anymore. And I sort of like that. It's like, wow, I have a color that nobody else can have anymore, because they just don't make them. And that's fine. But some people may be like, oh, well, I have to have a unique color because because it helps me stand out. It shows that I'm unique and I am different. But I would argue that the reason why blue, greens, and yellows are so common is because they resonate with a great amount of people. They are timeless. Um, it's very hard to really grasp this, and I remember when I was writing this, I was like, this is gonna seem so silly. We're talking about a lightsaber color, it's a fictional thing, but this is what resonates with you. You addressed your fears, and you had to find the fears that resonated with you. Sometimes they are so simple. My fear, for example, was um, disappointing people. I am such a yes man. Like, I will say yes so quickly to things and be like, ah, I bit off more than I could chew. Once again, here I am, rushing ahead, saying yes and being like, idiot, why did you do that? And that's my fear, making people feeling disappointed with me. But I've had to train myself to be like, you can say no. They might be disappointed, but most of the time they'll be like, as long as, like, so sometimes when somebody says, if I have to say no to somebody, I'll be like, I actually have a lot on my plate at the moment, I can't do that right now. They can't be disappointed with me because they know that I'm busy. Like, I have a lot of things to do. I have a job, I have an apprentice, I have the conclave, there's a lot of things that I have to do, and sometimes I just don't have the spoons for it. So, that's my fear, and I had to address that. Like, it's such a simple fear. It's not like I have a fear of zombies or being murdered or something. Yeah, those are fears, but they're not really fears that affect me on a regular basis. Um, but I am afraid of letting people down and making people feeling disappointed in me. So I've had to address that, and now I know how to say no. I still struggle with it, and I will say yes way too often. But that's just me. Then the next part was collecting your parts, finding the passions, and where you fit into all this. And I quickly, like, I've always been a leader. Like, I did the Air Cadet program back in Canada, and I quickly became a leader in it. I just I love organizing, getting things done, and having a project and being like, okay, I need to delegate. Like, if it's too big for me, I need to delegate, get leaders, touch base, show that I'm helping everybody, but knowing that the people that I've delegated to have it. Because a leader doesn't lead by themselves. A leader develops leaders. So I had my two go-to guys who I was actively training to be leaders, and I would go to them and be like, hey, I need you two over here. This is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. Go. And they would go and they would do it, and I would just watch and touch base, and I could get so much done in very little time. When I went to the military, I took that skill with me, and I blew my sergeant away because he gave me an impossible task. I still did it. I have always really resonated with being a leader, and that's why that's just always been my goal when I joined the Jedi community. The first year I was sort of up in the air, but once I got into it, I realized I'm like, I want to teach people, I want to help people, I want to organize things, and that became a core staple of me being a Jedi. Of course, it clashes with my fear, and it even enhances my fear, because I'll say yes to so many things because it's a leadership opportunity, but I need to say no because it might be too much for me. I can't burn out. So you combine the two, and it sort of becomes paradoxical, but it becomes me. I am a bag of worrying about, I'm a big old bag of worries. I worry about letting people down, but at the same time, I want to help everybody. That's just me. And for me, it's yellow. It's yellow because it's warmth, energy, and it's protecting people. And that's the meaning that I pull from it. So, there is no rush. This is the last point that I want to make about all of this whole 3-part series. There's no rush. You can spend the next year tackling your fears, and you should continuously return to these things. What is your fears? Your fears will change. The stronger you get, the more powerful your ego gets, and your ego will constantly try to tear you down, and that's natural. This is how our brains have developed. The ego has kept us safe for so long because it's able to process things differently. It helps you maintain social awareness, all these great things, but at the same time, some people become very over-dependent on the ego, and they basically just settle into it, and what we physically see of them is just their ego manifesting physically. I see people who read way too into like a situation where somebody will. I had this one. I was talking to a friend, and this person walks into the room, sighs rather heavily, and then walks away. And she went. My friend went off and off about how this person snubbed us, and I was really confused. I'm like, but I didn't see that. The person had forgot her coffee, and she had to go get it. This person allowed their ego to get over them, to control them, and be like, oh, this person snubbed you. You have to be angry about this. Maybe she did snub us. Like, it's possible that she could have snubbed us, but it ended up just being coffee. She needed a coffee before we started class. It was 7 a.m. Of course, you guys need coffee. So maybe, yeah, she could have snubbed us, but it ended up being coffee. But if she was snubbing us, why are we allowing ourselves to get angry about it? So we have to constantly be addressing this ego. And as our ego evolves, our fears can evolve. So we have to continuously come back to it over and over and over again. And once you do it the first time, your ego will start changing. It's going to start formulating a plan to take you down again. As you go along in your training, you might realize your own passions, your own goal as a Jedi will change. So in the part 2, we had addressed how you want to accomplish, what defines you as a Jedi, what makes you unique. Sometimes and that should change. Eventually that should change. So some people can become flanderized. That's the right word for it, right? You don't want to just become a stereotype of what you idealized originally. People are so infinitely unique, and they change all the time. So what you could be now, or what you could be now, may not be who you are 5 years from now. And I would hope not. If you plan on remaining exactly the same for 5 years, you're not, like, I don't think you're doing it right. Like, you're not perfect yet. Nobody is perfect. It's physically impossible. You have to have a training plan to get from point A to point B. But once you get to point B, there's point C, point D, forever. It's infinite. So there's no rush in this. Okay, I pumped out this whole thing, and the videos come out over the course of 3 weeks. It shouldn't just take 3 weeks to get this done. This could take years, and this should be something you do for the rest of your life. Continual addressing of the problem. It's like living in a house that is continuously being reinfected with termites. This is something you're going to have to come back to, and it could change. So here's a physical demonstration. My first lightsaber, this is my first lightsaber, but it's changed. The pommel used to be a completely different pommel. This used to be a much shorter emitter, an angled emitter. There's scars on it. You got the scar, you got all these dings. The light has changed. It used to be a white one, and now it's a yellow. Got this. There's all these things that have changed to it, just like me. I've now been using this actively for 3 years, as of 2 days ago. It's changed along with me, and this is a physical demonstration of, like, a physical representation of my growth. It's changed along with me. There's scars, it's beaten, it's bruised, and it's evolved, just like I have. And it will continue to change. maybe eventually this one will just go up on a shelf one day and just be a reminder of where I started, where I got to, and why I've changed to the point where this just becomes a memento. Who knows? I hope that day doesn't come too soon. I'm quite attached to this one. But we are now approaching almost an hour into this video. As I said originally, this was supposed to be a 10-minute video, and then it ended up becoming this crazy long, almost feature-length movie. So, brief recap. First part was about addressing your fears to attain your crystal. Second part was about addressing what made you unique in your path. And then finally, you put it all together to understand who you are. Actualize yourself. And actualizing yourself, and I was using a light. This whole thing is I've been using lightsabers as an example of your manifestation, because it's one that we all can understand. I could have done this whole thing with 2-string Chinese violins, but not everybody has ever touched one or even heard what they are, so it would have been silly. But since I'm doing this for the Jedi community, I'm pretty sure almost everybody's heard of what these are. So it's just a prompt. In the end, if you are nothing without your suits, if you're nothing without your suit, you don't deserve to have it. Tony Stark, right? If you aren't a Jedi without your lightsaber, are you one? A lightsaber is more than that. It is you, projected into the world. So, I could keep rambling about this for ages, and I'm not going to let myself hit the hour-long mark. So, we're just going to cut here. This one was very rambly, but I hope people have taken something from it. I hope this whole series has been helpful. I hope to see some discussion about this. If you have any questions about any of these parts, or if you want to just talk about it, feel free to talk to me. Like my messages are open, and I try to be active. Who knows? Like I'm available, and I want to help people. Okay, so I'm here. And I am Arisaig Winterthorn, Knight of the Conclave. This has been the Trials of the Gathering. It has been an absolute pleasure to do this for everybody, and I hope this really does help people. But that's all I have to say about this. May the Force be with you.